Hello, Theresa.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I love the old robot.
It's it's a skeleton from the Day of the Dead in Mexico that belonged to a friend of mine who is in fact dead. And my wife just got fed up with it being in the lounge, so it's ended up just today in my
I
office.
can relate. Tell her I relate.
It's just arrived, so now it's part of my office instead, which is where all the quirky things end up.
Yeah. Sorry about the delay. There was a reason. I was talking to Eamon Holmes.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yes. I can talk about that in the conversation as you like. It's all part of my mission to mainstream spirituality. But yeah.
Well. Why don't we say we've started and tell me about what's just happened, because it's just fresh.
There's a new podcast going into people's dreams, and I'm the dream lady, written encyclopedias and dictionaries, and I will be talking to celebrities. They will give me a dream, and we are going to talk about it. It's a way to get them to know them from the inside out, and I feel very honoured to have been asked. And
wow.
This morning we recorded with Eamon Holmes, who was delightful. Absolutely delightful. And he had a football-based dream, but I won't reveal any more. And we talked all about the implications of that, the importance of the dream life, what dreams are, why we have them.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I had it was kind of football related, I guess. I had a dream, this was a few years back now, which always fascinated me, when I was talking to Alex Ferguson and then he turned into Carl Jung, which I thought was
well, you know what you do is your football, isn't it? Football is like, I guess loads of men dream of football. It's sort of the archetypal masculinity, isn't it? Competition, teamwork, but also personal skills, all that. So I think, okay, we can talk about your dreams, Tim.
Yeah, they're endlessly fascinating. Well, maybe we can. Well, I'm all steaming up. I've got some glasses a year ago, and they always steam up.
In the pandemic, you see, everybody's dreaming so much more because our schedules are all over the place. We're worried and stressed, and dreams are like an internal therapist trying to help us make sense of this sea of emotion and chaos in our lives.
Yeah,
dreams are very helpful, and I'm trying to educate people to not dismiss dreams as random and meaningless, but they're actually your unconscious trying to talk to you in the only way it knows how, which is the language of symbols. And I'm making it my mission to get everybody to take dreams seriously and give them the respect they deserve.
Fantastic. Cool. All right. Well, I'm sure we're going to get back to dreams because that's where we've started. And hallelujah for that.
I'm sorry. I didn't know you were recording, Tim. That's naughty.
No, not at all. I always hit record straight away now, because it's like the whole thing for me is that, look, I don't know if this is a podcast or what it is.
I didn't know that. That's cruel. So as soon as the guest comes on, they're on.
Well, I not necessarily. If people say things they don't want to be public, I don't put them out. I just hit record straight away, because it feels like there's a lovely moment where you say hello to somebody for real.
Yes.
And the whole idea for this
on my camera pose, I would have come.
It's not too late. Is to capture, Tim and Theresa. Actually connecting.
And Freke, I've told you, that's who we are. We're Freke and Pain. That was very popular when I spoke to you last. My theory is that we do what we do to overcome the trauma of our surnames.
I love that theory. That's great. That's great. I mean, I did remember coming across in my 20s this Native American idea, I think it is, that a person's life flows from their name like a river from the source, and you give them their name. And I thought, Tim Freke, if only I could have been called
Pain. So there we are.
I should have been rich, happy person. Anyway, enough. This is the only bit really I'm going to do out of respect for people who may or may not be listening to this outside our conversation, and being part of it from that angle. I wanted to say a little bit about how we've ended up having this conversation, and then just to re-dive back in because we've already started. So I've been on your podcast, which I thoroughly enjoyed. You invited me to come on. Good. You invited me to come on again, which I said yes to. And then I thought afterwards, what a cheeky thing to do, because we're having this conversation before we're recording very shortly for your podcast. And so we're having these two conversations, and I've never done that before. So I don't know what that means. Anyway, you very kindly said yes. And the reason, well, there's lots of reasons, but one of the reasons that I wanted to do this as well is, and rather than just talk about, my ideas with you and blah, 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 which is I'd like to do, and I'd like to get your reaction to the ideas I've been exploring. But it also because you are involved in looking at a lot of ideas which often get dismissed as woo-woo. Mm-hmm. You also have a strong link to people who are trying to make those, who are exploring those from a scientific perspective. And I just thought, I just wanted to explore with you what the overall, where you'd come to in terms of what this is, what is life, what is existence, how do you see that? I'm particularly interested to discuss things like angels and all sorts of things like that, which are like, where do they sit in an understanding of what reality is? How do I feel about those? I don't know. I need to explore that. And the other thing which I loved was, obviously, you're highly educated. You have a degree from Cambridge. There's that basis as well. But I think the thing which really I loved the most, Theresa, was listening to you speak. I think it was a talk at Watkins, actually, or somewhere. And you talked about doubt, and you talked about self-doubt, about that looking at oneself and wondering if you've been mistaken. And that's absolutely essential to me and everything I do and how I live my life. So I really liked that. So I thought, this could be really fun and interesting. So that's the background. And the question, I think, to start us off is that big one, really. It's like, this is happening to us. What do you think it is? What's your best guess? What's happening to us?
Okay, experience, learning. That's why we're here, to experience the good, the bad, the everything. Sorry to lower or raise the tone, but I watched over Christmas that Disney movie Soul.
Me too, with the family. Yeah, we all watched that.
I think they got it spot on. Why we're here, because the lead character, without giving away, thinks he's here to be a musician, to give music to the world. And that is part of his role, but there's so much more than that he is underestimated, never seen before. And I love that. And it's now going to be something I'm going to recommend in all my books. My work's done. Just go and watch Disney Soul, really. But it's interesting because on my podcast, I actually had Lauren Carpenter as a guest, who was the co-founder of Pixar and science director at Disney.
Right.
And I do know that, he's now an IONS fellow, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and I do a lot of work with them trying to bring in the science of studying consciousness. So I know that Disney is very interested in these spiritual eternal themes. So to go back to your question, which we could talk forever about, sure. There's so many nuances. For me, life is experience, and you find your meaning and your purpose through that. As long as you're learning, you're living. And that's why I talk about the importance of doubt, because doubt is what drives us to find out the answers, to learn, to grow. It pushes us forward. I love my doubt now. I used to hate it, but now I love it because it's a sign. Look, you've got complacent. You're in your comfort zone, Theresa. You think you know it all. Grow some more. Doubt some more. So I hope I never stop doubting.
So when you say we come here, mm-hmm. What does here mean?
The material stuff. Senses, what we sense, what we feel, what we touch. I do believe that there's a spark, a spirit, an inner angel, whatever you want to call it, that is infinite and exists independent of our mind and our body, independent of our brain. I think our consciousness exists independent of our brain. That's what I believe personally. It's my personal belief based on my research. I won't force it on anyone else. I don't know for sure. As I say, I could be wrong. It could be just when we pass, that's it. I could be wrong. I always say that, but I choose to believe that maybe there is something out there. And anyone who's lost a departed loved one and feels that connection with that person in their heart and in their dreams and in their memories will know that there's a part of us that is infinite, that is all around, and death ends a life, not a relationship. And that's what my lifetime of research and writing has been all about, delving into that.
So, okay, so you mentioned the A word. Let me just go straight there, because I have a little bit of history myself, which I can maybe talk about later. When I was younger, around that. So when you said an inner angel, what do you mean by that word?
It's the part of you that knows what's in your highest interest and that's in your highest, knows what's for your highest good. The part of you that sees the bigger picture.
Okay.
Beyond this life, across time.
So that sounds similar to what to what in the ancient world with the daemon, the spirit. Is that so? Do you see it? And is that for you? Is that part of the psyche, or is that something beyond the psyche?
I think it's beyond. I think it's beyond, way beyond. And I think it's something, a place that we visit in our dreams, in our memories, and it's the force. I often talk about the force. I think it's just the force. It's what drives us and pulls us forward, and it's evolution. That's what we're here to do. We're here to learn and to grow and evolve. And I don't think too deeply about it, Tim. You may be surprised. I just sort of sense it and encourage other people to sense it.
So there's a I think I certainly have a very strong sense of there is a part of what I am which is wiser than other parts of what I am, and that idea of connecting to something which is the deepest aspect of oneself, I think, is a very real and common thing. So do you see that? Do you see that as so when you talk about angels, are you seeing that as human beings with this other aspect, or are you seeing it as more than that, or are you seeing it as something which has nothing to do with human beings necessarily, or does it have a form? Is it an imaginal form?
I think the angels within you, it's all of us all being many and one at the same, is a huge concept to understand.
Yeah.
Again, to reference that Disney movie Soul, when the fish goes up to the other fish and says, "I want the ocean. Which show me the ocean." And that's what people who think that angels have forms are. Where's the ocean? There's this something I need to find. And the fish says, "Well, you're in it." And they said, the other little fish says, "Well, it's just water. You're already there. It's already infinite. It's already a part of us." I think we over intellectualize something that's very simple. And again, I've tried to keep it very simple, because we just get caught in knots of these intellectual games. And, I've been at Cambridge, I know all about that, just talking and talking and talking. And all the time, we're missing out on experience and living our life to the full. We could have an academic debate, but where does that lead us? And especially in pandemic times, and that's what I've been talking a lot about recently, it's not enough to just keep talking and talking.
It worries me also, Theresa. I tell you why it worries me is because, I completely agree. Things need to be involved in our actual experience. And I did philosophy at university, and philosophy, I suspect, was even more abstract than theology. I don't know, maybe not.
Yes.
No, maybe not. It's like, but it's very removed, and you do event, and it's so far distant. It's like, how can that ever come back to my actual life? Which is why I left philosophy and went into retreat to meditate for a year instead. But the question, there's also questions about how do we interpret our experience, and if we're looking at our non-everyday experience, if we're looking at our experience that gets called spiritual, whatever that word it means, but there's that bag of stuff which is around. Is there survival after death? Can you have, is life meaningful in some way? Is all of life meaningful? Are certain events meaningful? All of those kind of questions. Then how we interpret that doesn't seem abstract to me. That feels like, for instance, how do I interpret the coronavirus? I've come across a lot of people, you may be one, I don't mean, I'm not assuming anything, who are saying, oh, look, this is some message. And my own feeling is, whoa, careful.
Well, no, I don't think it's a message.
Do you see what I'm saying, though? But the key thing is like how these seemingly abstract things, like, if you're going to use a word like angels, like what does that actually mean? Or to you, what does it mean? What's it?
It's a part of you that is working towards.
It's a part of me. Okay, I got it.
A part within you and external to you that is working towards your highest good.
So nothing to do with another type of being.
Not in my opinion, no. I don't see it that. I think as all as unified and all connected. As I said, that concept of the force. I've also worked with.
Yeah, hang on, but those are two different things, aren't they? Because
they're not. They're within and without. It's.
No, I mean the fact that we could all be connected, but there could be other types of being in the universe.
There well could be. I don't know the answers, Tim.
But you're not. But the thing I'm trying to home in on is what you mean by it, and you don't mean that. You don't mean archangels and
no.
And
there's a mistaken thing about. I've been called the Angel Lady because a lot of my books, I've written many books, have angel in the title.
Right.
If anyone actually reads them, these are a collection of stories, not necessarily of people who've seen winged figures or whatever. Right. A collection of stories of people who have had their lives changed by synchronicity, by the kindness of strangers, by being touched by angels or the force of goodness in different ways. And that's where I'm different from other angel experts out there who, pray to this archangel, pray to that angel. I'm actually not for that at all. It's not.
So you're talking about an aspect of ourselves, a deep aspect of ourselves.
It's very simple. People often try to ask me to define it all, and my approach to spirituality has got very simple. And as you get older, it's just be kind. It's that simple. Why do we have to complicate it? Just be as kind as you can. Treat others as you would be treated yourself. It's getting my books and my works are getting more and more condensed as I get older. When I was younger, it was all like all these theories and Akashic records and Archangel this and looking into all that. And I just feel now, especially the pandemic has been a huge wake-up call. I think I spoke to you on my podcast about this. I just think this is all nonsense. It's not helping anyone. If you want to understand the pandemic better, the way you can understand it better is to go out, we can't go out, but to maybe call someone who's living on their own, talk to them. In that moment of connection and helping someone, you're doing more good in that moment. And I think that's why we're here, to have compassion and empathy and to learn and to grow and to experience everything this life has to offer. I know this is difficult because we do come from different places. My readers are so different from yours. And that's why I love the fact we're having this debate, Tim. And it's probably
my
why
readers are so, because I've written so many different things. It's crazy.
Because I'm completely from a different place, and they're probably a lot of your devoted followers, and you have them. I know your podcast episode was hugely popular. Will be thinking this woman's bonkers. She doesn't know what she's doing. I can sense that, but I have a different approach now and a different take on spirituality. I'm really trying to simplify it and mainstream it, and I've been especially disturbed the emergence of gurus, mediums, psychics with alleged powers. I've played a part in supporting some of them, because I do believe that some people have abilities, but I've got to the point now, well, okay, they've got these abilities, let's study them, but these people shouldn't be worshipped or followed, and it gets dangerous. We're recording this on the back of a really key day in American history, where you see the power of words. I'm getting so conscious of my words because I have a following and what I say, the older I get, because it's not funny anymore. People who are claiming to have powers, I know people in our movement who have their followers line up to bless them. What is going on there, Tim?
Yeah, it's a very old heritage. Spirituality, as we're using the word, I think is quite a new thing, really, in the fact that it really has emerged since the decline of religion. Or not that religion has declined in terms of numbers, but in terms of influence, it definitely has. One of the things which has staggered me, Theresa, is to know in the UK is I haven't seen a single really religious response to the COVID crisis in the mainstream media. It's all been science. All of it has been science. And Boris Johnson's thing
You
the other
have,
day,
Tim.
the miracle.
I certainly have, because as I said, I've been writing for 25 years. My first book was about 20 years ago. I did some encyclopedias of the psychic world. I've always had my following of people who are interested in that. I've been blessed. I've had 2 Sunday Times top 10. I've written book after book with most major publishers, features, etc. I have been blessed, but it's a niche. 2020, it took a pandemic. I was contacted by the BBC, Radio 4, Beyond Belief, by Talk to 5 Live. I talked to Cosmopolitan, the gamut. And I know why they were reaching out to me, because allegedly it was under the lockdown dreams phenomenon. But what I tried to do by talking to them was show that dreams are the entry point to this invisible, unseen part of our lives. And it continues. As I said, what I was doing just before the podcast is a continuation of this. There is interest in that, but they're doing it through things like dreams, for example. That's safe, because we can think of dreams, dreams aren't too controversial. And I'm happy to go along with that. I'm happy to interpret dreams. I was on Channel 4 a couple of weeks ago talking to Anton de Beck, Russell Kane, and Catherine Ryan. They all had dreams they wanted decoding. What's happening there is the mainstream interested in spirituality.
Okay, let me clarify. What we haven't seen is a very powerful religious response. At any other time in history, there would have been, you would have pulled out the bishops, you would have had the focus for comfort, for hope would have been religious. Now we have, that's kind of gone into abeyance. We have science, which is looked on as providing the miracles.
Absolutely.
And we also have this new thing, which is why I say it's quite, this kind of spirituality without religion, which is exploring what this non-material domain and what its nature is, and has its roots in religion, but which is now separate from it. And I just want to say, I completely get what you're saying about trying to get things clear and simple. And I'm totally with that. I also completely get that the simplest thing you come down to is usually something like be kind, or love is what matters, or whatever, benevolence. And I'm completely with you. But also there feels like there is necessarily another side to that which will emerge, and it emerges through your very thing you talked about, which is doubt, which goes. It doesn't just, you can't just stop there, because what comes is, because life is full and complex. So like, for instance, you've talked today a number of times about dreams.
Yes.
So how you understand what a dream is based on a whole load of metaphysical assumptions about the nature of reality. And how you respond to, I just had a dream, isn't just given. It's how we understand it. And therefore, all those questions will necessarily arise. And we're forced to go beyond the just like be kind. It's like, yeah, that's a great foundation. It's a great starting place. But then we have to be, and if we're going to actually shift mainstream culture, then it feels like really important that the narratives that can be evolved, which include spiritual insight, can compete with these narratives that don't, because they're very strong and they're doing very well.
I mean, I completely agreement, especially what you say about religion. You are right. I think people are very nervous about religion because of the extremism. In America, we have the evangelical movement. It's so many people have evolved in that they're seeing how man-made religion is, based on sound foundations sometimes, but it is man-made. And it's also a way for people to get power and control over people's thoughts and whatever. And I think there is great nervousness about that. But you're absolutely right. There has not been a big religious response. But I think if there was, it would be shot down, ignored. I think people have had enough. I mean, religion is still very important to lots of people. And I respect that. I always say if your religion speaks to you and, makes you feel like your life has meaning and you harm no one, go for it. There's many paths to fulfillment, and if religion is that path for you, go for it. But you're right. You're right, Tim.
So what do you think a dream is then? How does that fit in with your...
That's what I've been working with scientists and neuroscientists and looked at all the theories. I know all the theories, random firings of the brain, you know, whatever. But at the end of the day, science doesn't really know why we dream. Science actually doesn't even know why we sleep. We don't sleep to rest because our mind's very active and our body moves in sleep. Why do we? It's this wonderful mystery, and that's where I am. I do love a mystery, and dreams are the ultimate mystery. What is going on there? What's the point? And I've dedicated a lot of my life to trying to find out what the point is of dreams, and I think they are some kind of internal therapist, the higher part of ourselves, using the language of symbols, because that's how the unconscious speaks, through symbols, to try and help us cathartically get rid of emotions and anxieties or stress, and also to give us messages and inspiration. I absolutely love, Tim, now working with dreams, because I feel that that's a way to engage people. You talk about this shift. I'm starting with dreams. That's where I'm going, because everybody dreams, even those who say they don't, they do. And even the most cynical, they kind of want to know what the meaning of this mad dream where they're being chased by monsters meant, or they were paralyzed, or they couldn't find a restroom in public, you know, all these common themes. And once you start actually working with people and their dreams, which is what I do now, it's wonderful, because you see all the sparks going off. They start to understand they're far more interesting than they realize. There's so much in there.
I've never looked into the history, but hearing you talk, I'm sure somebody has. I don't know if you have. Maybe my friend Charlie Morley, who works with dreams, knows it. But you know, I wonder when we stopped, because you know, the further you go back in history, it looks like dreams are really big things. And you know, if I think about Black Elk Speaks, for instance, where it's all, the whole culture is about prophetic dreams and you know, the discussion of dreams, and at a certain point, obviously, in our culture, people stopped waking up in the morning and sharing their dreams. And I wonder when that was.
I think religion would have had a part to do with it, because, as I say, dreams are a bit like your internal guide and your internal therapist. They give you a glimpse of your own power and possibility. And I think religion very much clamped down on dream interpretation, the concept of an oracle, all this kind of thing, and working on yourself, because it's much in religion, you have to look to the priests, to the organizations to guide you, whereas dreams empower you to guide yourself, because that's what they do. I mean, dreams have inspired much of what I do. My dream life is extremely vivid, and I'm so grateful for that. And I've been blessed to have people write to me and talk about how their dreams have changed their life or inspired them or shifted them. As I say, I know you talk about shifts, and I think dreams play a huge part in that.
So I can't resist, but let me have a little stab. I haven't done this before, ever. Let me have a little stab at dreams from the perspective I'm exploring, and just see if I can make it hold together for 5 minutes and see what you think. Is that all right?
Absolutely. I'm sure it'll be brilliant, Tim.
Well, not necessarily. It might be very clever. It might be totally wrong. How can I do it quickly? So the narrative, we've talked about this, I'm sure, before, but the narrative I'm exploring is that what existence is a process of evolution. Everything is evolving. And so for me, everything is this process of emergence into higher and higher levels of emergence, which means things build on what's gone before. So that with the arising of the psyche, it looks to me like the nature of this evolving information has created a representation of the sensory world, which then has its own reality. And that the psyche is a processing system, if you will. So that we're taking information, it's being processed by the psyche, but we're also able to, it's processing itself. Right now, it's doing that while we're talking to each other. And the fundamental low levels you can see are arising in animal life forms, even in plants, actually, where they're learning. And there's clearly concepts about time, because you can't learn without that, which will become in us, this through words and symbols, will become this experience of being conscious. And so it feels like what we've done, or what the evolutionary process has done, is created, to use a modern jargon, a kind of virtual reality. And we inhabit, we can go into that. So that what's happening with dreams is lots of things probably, but it's part of the work of the processing system. And I think that's another more kind of dry way of saying what you're saying, which is it's self-therapy, that you're actually, it's a way of working out what the hell is going on in the psyche. But that also and this is my area of real speculation here, it is, if everything is emerged, and if the psyche is recent, which it seems to be comparatively, is the rising of dreams actually part of the process which created the realm that gets called the spirit realm, heaven, bardos, all the rest of it? That actually what we're witnessing is that's part of the process whereby another reality which you can inhabit began to establish itself. Firstly in individual spaces, but then in a collective space, which is why the space which people enter into in near-death experiences is like a dream, because it is. It's just that the individual dream has become something which is universal. And so what you're witnessing really is actually a stepping stone in that evolutionary process, which hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there, it's still functioning, it's still doing what it's doing, but it's actually part of something greater.
Have you done?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm in line with all that. I do think it is part of an unseen realm, an unseen place. I mean, I don't claim to be able to know what that place is, whether it's consciousness or the part of it that is infinite and exists independent of our body and brain. I don't know. I think of it as a kind of a portal, an entry point. And that's what I'm looking at now, an entry point, that going into the world of the dream, understanding that, becoming lucid in your dreams is an entry point to something infinite and unseen, an unseen realm that I do believe is real.
Have you explored psychedelic experiences, Theresa?
Everybody says that when they look at me. When I was on Russell Brand.
No. It's not to do with how you look. It's to do with whether I can ask you questions about it.
He said exactly the same. He said, because when I went on Under the Skin, and he was saying to me, what you're talking about sounds very much like in my psychedelic days when I was, and yes, it does sound kind of similar. I haven't actually indulged, despite what people may say. No, I haven't. No, it does sound like that. But it's not for me. I don't need drugs to do that. I can do that naturally, get into that kind of like.
I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that you take psychedelics, but of course you can't actually say that because you've never taken them, so you don't know whether it's the same or different.
No, but I know that I've asked that question so many times that what I'm talking about sounds like a trip. Yeah. It does sound like a trip. I'm not qualified to judge on that because it's not something I've researched or experienced. But people who have say that it sounds similar. However, it's not comparable because I think that experience would be very draining. Anything that isn't natural for me would feel very draining, really, rather than empowering. I see the spiritual experience, investigating your dreams, becoming lucid in dreams, as very empowering and energizing.
I just have Terence McKenna. Do you know Terence McKenna?
No, I don't.
Doesn't matter. Okay, he's dead now, but he was an amazing man.
I'm sure he's here in spirit, Tim.
Yeah, he definitely. There's no doubt about that. And I just have Terence in my ear going, because I remember him saying, that it's like people keep saying it's unnatural. What's more natural than bending down, picking up a mushroom and putting it in your mouth?
Well, in certain cultures, yes, it is. I mean,
it's pretty natural, really.
Yeah, but as long as it, if it's not damaging or unhealthy, if there's health implications, that's certainly not something I would recommend because. And
I'm not recommending it to you or anyone, and it's not a big part of my life. So, but it's a part of my past at certain phases, and it does remind me of it.
With alcohol, anything like that, anything that tries to get you into this peak state, you don't need it. I've never needed it. Any to get into this state of bliss and where you can see the bigger picture and you feel amazing. You can do that naturally. I can do it
without a shadow of doubt. You can. Although I do want to say, if I look at my experiences, hardly any of them have been to do with psychedelics, small percentage. But I have to say, those psychedelic experiences were not the same. They have a
Can you
particular
tell me
quality.
the difference? What was the because
I think the biggest difference is they're all different actually, but is the visionary quality, both in terms of like being in entering into the imaginal space, and the way that the image space reveals itself is not like any other dream or meditation or vision that I've had, and also the way in which that imaginal vision gets projected onto the sensory world in a way that you are just no longer in kind of both, and you can distinguish. They are just completely melded in a way that can be both amazing and very confusing.
Was that your curiosity, your hunger to know, that drove you to that encouraged you to take those? Was it just curiosity? What
Yeah, I guess curiosity is. I mean, I've kind of set out to try and do everything once, which doesn't cause anyone else a problem.
How far are you down your list, Tim? Have you got many more to go?
I worry sometimes that it's going to end, but it hasn't yet.
Oh, it never will.
But now I'm on to more boring things, like, I just took up weightlifting because I'd never do that, but I'd do it once.
Really, the body's the temple of the spirit.
And occasionally a new psychedelic experiences will arrive, and I'll go, oh, I'll see what that is. But as I get older, I'm more careful. But I'm not, I agree with you. Essentially, I'm agreeing with you. Look, the majority of really powerful spiritual experiences for me had nothing to do with psychedelics.
Yeah.
But I've pulled this into a dead end really there. It's the idea that you were saying about dreams as entry points, and that we're entering something bigger. So the other thing which I picked up from your conversation, the Watkins thing, which I just wanted to, about doubt. I think we're both on the same page with, why it's healthy to question and all this. What for you, when you have those periods, what for you is it that makes you, let's take a particular thing. Let's take something like the survival of the soul or the psyche after death. So I presume that is probably an area that you get times when you think, is that right? Have I just believed something for, what is it? Is it your individual experiences that give you a sense of, no, I am confident in that belief, or is it evidential, or is it how do you deal with that? What is it that makes you come back again and write another book, or feel confident to say the things you?
As I say, rather like you, I think I've had beliefs and then questioned them and questioned them and questioned them again. I guess it's just, it sounds very simple. It's down to a sense of inner peace. And if I don't have that when I'm talking about a belief, and I especially find it actually when I do talks or interviews and I'm saying something which I've written in my book or I've promoted, but as I'm saying it, I'm not actually convincing myself anymore. You get that point when you think, I'm on a loop here. This is a tape I'm playing. I don't want to be like this tape. There's more I need to know. And that's been my journey, especially the last 5 years, because I was on a very level. I was collecting reader experiences, paranormal experiences. I got quite lazy, actually. I went to the finest institution in the world to study. Was very, very fortunate to have book after book about this sort of thing, and then found myself in the role as a collector. I was a psychic collector. People, because in each of my books, I put my email and say, write to me if you have a story. And first of all, that was wildly exciting, and the media love it because you've got real life case histories to put in papers, to talk about. This is exciting. But it all got, I think, well, who am I then? I'm just collecting all this and saying, well, it might be true. But that's what the publishers wanted, because that sells. And there's this conflict always with every spiritual writer of the business, with the why you're doing it. And it actually changed, I would say now 7 years ago, when it was like, what am I doing? I've done this, I've written this book, and now I'm being asked to write it again, to reinvent the wheel. I don't know if you have that. You write a book that does very well, you're asked to reinvent it, basically write the same thing over and over again. And if you try and deviate from that, you get criticized. So I decided, right, what am I criticized for? I'm criticized, first of all, that I'm not a psychic or a medium. So I went on a journey to try and find out more about these people who claim to have these powers, to go incognito. I literally traveled the country to try and look at it and try and talk to them and understand them. Second, you know, I went on the Merseyside skeptics and places like that, hounding me, where's the science? No proof. So then I went on a journey to push what I believed in further. And I worked with scientists and neuroscientists to try and grow and to be bigger than I had the statement I'd originally made. But what I found is the resistance to you doing that. People want to see me as this blonde angel lady. Stay there, be quiet, have your dreams, talk to the fairies, you know. Do you believe in unicorns? You know, all that. Yes, I love all that. Yes, well, you know, I love it. There's a part of me that is very frivolous and that, you know, wants to be this little child, but you've got to grow up at some point. And I'm getting there, Tim. I'm still not really taken seriously because I do have a sense of humor and I love to laugh. And spiritual people tend to be very serious. I do think humor is much needed in spirituality. Sometimes I say things to deliberately court controversy because I want a reaction. I want that spark. I want people to be alive. But I'm getting there. And it's wonderful now that I've got this lovely collaboration with IONS, with likes of Dean Radin and Helena Warbeck, Julia Mossbridge, who I co-authored a book with called The Premonition Code. And would you believe that book was reviewed in a science journal? How, of course, it was very funny because with me, they said, Theresa Cheung writes encyclopedias, quotation marks, enough said about her, the better. Now on to Dr. Julia Mossbridge, the neuroscientist. But it didn't matter because that book, the whole point of it was to show a spiritualist, a believer, can work with a scientist. But that's what I'm doing now. And
Fascinating.
I'm really enjoying
Fascinating.
it. And I
Good for you.
I think I'm enjoying it. And again, now enjoyment is becoming more and more important. So I don't care anymore about whether, you know, it's, you know, I get the critical approval or it's not about that anymore. It's about what I'm doing. Does it have meaning? Is it helping people open their minds, think about their lives in a different way?
It kind of falls away all the other stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I found
I don't
exactly the
want to be
same.
too serious
Exactly
about
the
it.
same. It just almost sometimes I just feel like I just want to just be quiet because, you know, I can't.
No, don't, Tim. We need your voice.
But so yeah, so I completely get that thing about that. Just, you know, I remember my international bestseller was the Jesus Mysteries, and we did a follow up on that, and then the third book
knew about you. Yeah.
was you know, I'd done with Jesus. I finished. And I was going on and doing a whole book on awakening and looking at, you know, and they came back and went, no, it's got to be about Jesus. You're on the Jesus shelf. We'll be starting again. And they were right, of course.
What category you're in for the
They were right. I did start again. So for that third book, make you laugh, we released a book called The Laughing Jesus, which had Jesus in the title, but wasn't about Jesus.
Brilliant. Good for you. Good for you.
So I get that. So I want to home in on, okay, so you talk about going to see mediums, and this is stuff that I did, you know, I mean, not like you've done it, I'm sure, just because, you know, in my teens and my 20s, I went and saw loads of mediums. You know, I was involved in an occult lodge, which was kind of a little kind of cult really, but it was fascinating and gave me the weirdest year I've ever had in my life. It's like every day was crazy. We were connecting with angels and thises and that's and everything. It was just like one long trip. It was a year trip. And at the end of it, I came out and wow, Jesus, I had to be very, very quiet for a very long time. But part of my exploration of going around, you know, the psychic center in London and all that, you know, we're talking about the late 70s and 80s.
Yes.
Early 80s. And there was a whole load of stuff which was really impressive and then a whole load of stuff which wasn't. And it was all mixed up. And I couldn't, you know, it's like, I mean, I've sat in, more recently actually, where somebody has taken, you know, someone paid for me to speak to a medium online, cost him 500 quid, but he was so impressed. He said, you must speak with her. And it captured the experience for me, because on the one hand, she was incredibly intuitive.
Yes.
She claimed she hadn't Googled me. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Oh, it's impossible not to, isn't it?
I would have thought so. But, but I'm not going to accuse her of being dishonest, because I don't know that's true. Incredibly complimentary. And, the things that were surrounding me were all wonderful things. And I was, and I come to this as somebody who has a strong spiritual intuition that death is not the end. Yes. Who's had experiences myself, which are my own little experiences with my mother when she was dying, or my father, and continue to have that. I've worked with people who are dying, and I've seen that. And that's where I was curious for you was, is it your individual experience? Is it the questioning and the evidence which does it for you? Or is it just always in a base? Maybe, maybe not. You one of the, because a lot of people I respect are agnostic, actually. Yes. They may say, well, I tend towards it, but who knows, or,
Well, for me, I was born into it. From the age of 3 or 4, I was going to, being born into a family of spiritualists, talking to dead people is commonplace. But I was very conscious as I was growing up. I was surrounded by people who claimed to have these abilities, but I had none. I did not see dead people in the playground. I didn't see angels, and yet I was constantly surrounded by people who said they did. So I believed just because that's what I was brought up to believe. But of course, when I went to university and everything, I began to start seriously questioning and also wanting to develop my own psychic abilities. I went to the College of Psychic Studies, all these, I did every course, probably like you did. I had a few moments, where things, maybe I got an intuitive hit, but I cannot say I'm psychic or I see visions and aura. I'd love to see an aura, Tim. I'd love to say I see, beings of light shooting out of you. I'm sure they are, but I don't. And I began to realize actually a lot of people are just like me. They want to believe, but they haven't got these abilities. So let's study more closely these people who have. So I went to spend time with them, and there are a lot of common themes in their lives as well that I think should be scientifically investigated. Childhood trauma is one of them. Gay, lesbian, bi, often. Left-handed. And belief. And the theme of that is feeling like an outsider. So they've had to develop some kind of ability. This is research done at the Windbridge Institute, actually, that I'm also.
This is fascinating.
This is research on psychics. That there are some, there's always exceptions, as you know.
Of course.
Always exceptions. And some psychics won't fall in any of these categories. But they tend to, from what this research showed. And it's been recently published this year, actually. If you go to the Windbridge Institute, Dr. Julie Beischel there, who's been on my podcast, and she talks about this research, because they're trying to find and there's a genetic factor that it's passed down. So I wanted to understand them. For me, sorry, I go on a tangent. So
no, it's a fascinating tangent.
What makes me believe in them is not so much them, what they're doing, but if I see them having a positive impact on the people that they are helping, and if they're not abusing that connection, like they have, for me, a good psychic or medium is someone who does not encourage repeat visits. You do 1, 2, possibly tops, who doesn't charge excessive amounts of money, and that person goes away feeling better. For me, that's the touch of heaven. Something's happened there, and I don't care how it's happened. It's helped them. And if I go to a spiritual service and I see a medium, and these, a lot of them are not paid, they do it voluntary, and yet you can see that the people in the congregation are somehow getting proof of survival, because a medium has said, well, I can see your son and he died of cancer, and the person goes, that's right. I want to know how they're doing that. The hits sometimes, who was getting the most hits? And I think I found a few people who, when they went and they hadn't Googled, they were doing this for free also. I think those people are worth investigating as data scientifically.
And what did you find, Theresa? I mean, were you impressed at the end?
I don't know if it's telepathy, but even so, even it is, as I talked about this with Dean Radin, even if it is telepathy and it's not afterlife communication, surely that's worth investigating. That's fascinating.
Definitely, yeah.
It shows the limits of the brain.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's where I was, is, so let's not just hound them and stone these people and say it's all evil. If they're helping people and it's not harming anyone and it's not brainwashing them or making them dependent, because increasingly, actually, I've got on a bit of a mission to stop this codependency between a teacher and their followers. We see it in nightmare scenarios with what's happening in America. You could say Trump's some kind of cult figure. And I see that happening within the New Age movement. I've been shocked, actually, to see how many of the people that I admired have been liking posts saying Trump won or whatever. People I never would have thought so. This conspiracy theories, and how much within the New Age movement is people believing in conspiracy theories and fantasies that are unproven. For me, that's not spirituality. Because we go back to that eternal question, because you believe something, does that make it real? All these questions. You see, I'm firing on all cylinders here.
You are firing, and I'm fascinated. If I want to home in to try and understand here, because what I'm hearing is kind of two opposite things, both of which I really relate to. And they probably go together. On the one hand, I hear a part of you which is very pragmatic. It's very like, look, if it's helping, if it's kind, if people are finding meaning, it's okay. And I get that. It's like, yeah, look, the world's, hard enough, if whatever gets you through the night, there's that. And then on the other hand, I see this really intellectual, curious Theresa, probably the one who ended up in Cambridge, who's like, yeah, and what is actually happening here? Is it this? Is it this? What's going on here? And I kind of get both of them. But they're kind of pulling in different directions sometimes.
My life, yes, it's trying to find harmony between those two parts of me. Yeah, and I think that's very much why I'm here on this planet at the moment, to try and harmonize that and to learn. And I'm a work in progress. I don't know. I'm just offering my life experience, my research, my collaborations. And that's what I offer to people, in the hope it will encourage them to find out. Because there's a huge psychics, if they can do it, if they have this ability, surely it should encourage us to try and develop that ourselves. It should empower us to think, well, humans are capable of this. I can be capable of so much more too. Don't follow these people. Don't worship them. Let it empower you to be
I'm definitely with you with that. It's spirituality, having been around spirituality for, bit like you, different to you. I didn't grow up in it, but I had my first awakening when I was very young, and then I've spent now 50 years in it. And my opinion of spirituality is very low. But then probably if I'd spent 50 years in politics in my, or plumbing, then I'd have a very low opinion of that, because you can tend to see, and what you're pointing at is, Jesus, there's so much which is wrong with this. But the thing which drives me on, I was thinking about this today, actually, because I'm working on these lots of philosophical ideas is where I've got pulled into, quite unexpectedly, really, over the last 10 years, more than the experiential, which is still there. But it kind of, part of me just feels like, I really don't need to do this for me anymore, because I've arrived at somewhere I'm happy with. But it just feels collectively, the change which has happened in our culture with the collapse of religion has been hugely beneficial over here and not over here. And the bit which isn't is that, well, let's do it the other way around. If you took our culture, say like the UK, a very secular, mainly secular now culture, and if it became a culture in which it wasn't woo-woo and blah and a bit nutty, to say, no, death isn't the end. And we need to understand that in how we treat people when they're dying, how you live your life. We need to develop the faculties to connect these realms more closely. Look, telepathy is a everyday occurrence. Most people experience it quite a lot all the time. They just don't give it a name. But if we shifted that,
that's what I'd love.
We would be in a completely different world. Now, if the reductionists or the physicalists or the naturalists are right, and that's just a kind of psychosis, sometimes a beneficial one, but nothing real, then we need to see that. But if it's not, if it's actually about a level of reality that we're as a culture kind of dismissing, it really becomes important to understand it, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. And that's what my mission is. And that's what I'm dedicating the rest of my life to. That's what I want to do. I just want to open people's minds to that possibility, that there's so much more about them yet to discover and explore. And this stuff, this material stuff, is wonderful and it should be experienced, but it's not all that there is. That's where I am. Very
Beautiful.
simple. And I think once you start going on that journey and start investigating the unseen part of you, life becomes so fascinating. There are not enough hours in the day to learn about it. And a lot of people are saying they're bored or they feel unmotivated. And it's why? Because you're not tapping into that part of you, that spiritual and unseen part of you, which makes life so engaging. And I love the fact that scientists are now studying the inner world, our consciousness. What is it? You know, the science of consciousness. You know, Nobel Prize winners, physicists, leading scientists doing that. What a step forward for science to do that. There's this whole breed of new scientists out there looking at this. And in the data is showing in most of their studies that there's something there. There's something unexplained and unseen. And if I'm going to worship anything, I think actually I'm starting to worship the scientists. You know, I'm like this with them. I'm because they risk ridicule from their profession. It's tough for them to get their work published in journals and respected. But they are doing it. They are having, you know, this study about genetic traits of psychics and mediums, for example. This study of a medium, are they getting the hits? You know, this is all being done. This study of near-death experiences, study of energy healing. You know, these studies are being done, but we're not hearing about them. They're hidden in academic and scientific journals. And I'm trying to actually get people to know that they are, like Julia Mossbridge, the neuroscientist who studies precognition. Her research is amazing because she studies presentiment. When people are awake, that their brain and their heart rate knows the future because there's increased activity when there's a, you know, before an alarming image is shown. These studies have been published, but they're buried. And it'd be great if more people knew that these studies are out there.
So how that work that you're doing interacts, I think, with the work that I seem to be trying to do now is, and I've just literally been working on this morning before we spoke, is it feels like every belief that anyone has is never a thing on its own. It's always embedded in a whole web of what Quine called a web of beliefs, or really a narrative, a story. And that's why I do this series. You know, what is life? What is existence? What's the story which you put everything into?
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't have one coherent story. There's many stories that don't really fit together often. But the reason that science, as the story it's telling right now, why it has to bury it, is because these bits of information just don't fit. And because they don't fit, it would mean such a paradigm shift that it's unthinkable.
Yeah.
And so the part in the puzzle that I'm trying to do is to come up with another story, which absolutely gets what the science has revealed right, you know, all the way down without trying to hijack it. My worry with a lot of what's going on is that certainly things like quantum physics have been hijacked and misrepresented.
Just trying to hear New Age people talking about quantum physics, I just feel like it's like, be quiet. You don't really understand it. I mean, it's just like the way that's something I get angry about.
Yeah.
They have. Sorry.
No, really, yes, me too. You can be the angry one.
Understand it properly.
Means I don't have to.
And they just have a few sort of academic, scientific-y sounding words to like validate their healing system or their modality. Drives me nuts.
And it's not just, you know, I mean, there was a, you know, it's not just it's a, I mean, there's lots of people I could choose, but the person that I was looking at just, you know, received an email just before Christmas, I think it was. I just took it out and went, that's such a good example. Was the biologist who wrote Biology of Belief, who seems like a really lovely guy, whose name is
it Joe
No, it's
I know the biology, but I'm going to Google
anyway, the gentleman who wrote that.
Whilst you're talking, carry on.
And it was astonishing to me. He wrote there and went, quantum physics, the most established and certain of all sciences, this is not a quote, this is a rough, you know, paraphrase, shows that you create your own reality. Be conscious how you're doing that today. And it was like, wow, this is a guy who's in the New Age area, which I'm trying to work in. in spirituality to try and establish a genuine, thoughtful, who's completely misrepresented quantum physics in order to endorse an idea. No wonder we end up thinking this is being judged as woo-woo, because
they do it with such certainty as well.
Which actually, there's a thought here which I want to come back on, and then we've been talking for ages, haven't we? And we've got another conversation coming up. One of the things with that I experienced and with mediums and psychics generally was that one of the mistakes that I saw again and again was, again, the story they were telling. So they had a story in which they were talking to the dead and blah, blah. So there was a kind of a certainty with it. It felt like they had to be completely confident that they were right. What you said was the number of hits they got. And I like that, because then it becomes, because you only need 3 or 4 really good hits and something's happening. Do you know what I mean? You only need one black swan and all swans aren't white.
Yeah.
And so the idea that we exaggerate these things and no one's right all the time about anything. And that what we just need is that, and if people have got abilities to connect telepathically or to actually go deeper into the spirit realm or the bardos, whatever you call that, than other people, then wouldn't be a great surprise if sometimes they got it right and sometimes they got it wrong. And that would really help if we had that attitude to it.
Yeah, but I think psychics and mediums do feel under great pressure to perform, and I've seen it happen many times that they are, I actually, in my early days as a writer, I was a ghost writer for some very well-known. That's how I learned my craft. Yes,
Sorry, that's just such a funny idea of being a ghost writer for a medium.
Yes, because so I've seen a lot behind the scenes.
Yeah, me too.
The pressure to perform when you've got a stadium with 1,000 people.
Yeah,
there's big pressure.
That must be immense. Wow, God, that must be strange.
You can't. I mean, it's a bit like an internet connection. That's what they do say, psychics and mediums. It's like establishing a strong internet connection with the other side. And sometimes, as you know, like with your Zooms, it will freeze or it won't, you won't connect. So, I do think psychics and mediums that go and want to become celebrities, that you need to question that. What's going on there?
I think the other thing which I get, and I haven't looked into it over the recent years enough, but maybe you have, so it feels like too good an opportunity to let you go quite without asking you, is there's a thing, I mean, it's a different thing, but with channeled wisdom, for instance, which I struggle with sometimes. Again, because of the absoluteness. It's not my own higher
Yeah, but when somebody says, I mean, obviously I have a lot of friends in this community and they say, I've channeled this.
Yeah.
It's very hard, isn't it, to sort of contradict, and a part of you, the sort of the gullible part, we all have that gullible part, that people-pleasing part, wants them to feel good and to, it's very difficult when
it's absolutist, isn't it? It's a bit like you were saying about the guru thing. It's like, what if I say, hey, Theresa, when I told you my theory, if I went, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think? It's completely different if I've just been told by the elders of disembodied masters that this is the way it is. It's like, whoa, okay. So
sorry to interrupt, I get excited, but I had this about 3 or 4 years ago. I was doing an interview with a very well-known person, I won't say any names, and she suddenly told me in the interview that I had all these beings of light. I was an angel, and I admit the vain part of myself was so like I felt you are, like the rug's pulled under your feet. Then you fall into that.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be told that they're touched by spirits and angels and everything. And looking back, I thought, oh my goodness, I fell right into that. Because after that, I was completely like a lamb. I was like a puppy with them. I was like, pathetic. I was so susceptible to flattery. And that worries me. Sorry, I'm interrupting you again.
No, it's wonderful. I love it. So I can't remember what I was going to ask you now, but I was just thinking about, that's exactly what happened. It didn't happen to me, but that's exactly what the lady, I was worried. I'm not saying she was doing that. Maybe I am surrounded by great beings of light because I'm on some great mission.
We all are.
It's like, or, well, the inference is we all are, but not as much as you. It's
Yes.
like that's the thing. Who knows? But I'm aware from being years and years around spiritual teachers that there are certain things you can do to make people feel special. And then it's not just spiritual teachers, of course, politicians. Everyone can do it. It's charming, isn't it? I focus my attention on you. I make you feel like you're something, and you love me.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful thing sometimes, and it can be a dangerous thing other times, because it depends on the intention. But none of which was to do with what I was going to ask you. Damn it! I was like, oh yeah. I said I can't let you go. I need to ask you.
Yeah, you did.
That mediums, yes, the black swan analogy.
Yes.
Have you come across with some of these mediums you've hung out with, things which you've looked at which has just gone, that individual case there is so strong and so convincing? The reason I brought up channeling is, not to get into that, but is that what always amazes me about it is how banal it is. It's like, I never listen to a channeled wisdom and go, wow, that's full of amazing ideas I've never thought of. That's incredible. I just get told, be peaceful and be nice, or something. It's like, stuff I already knew. So what I'm looking for always is that moment where it's like, if you're really channeling the Pleiades, tell me how you combine Newton's theories of gravity with Einstein, or something. How do you combine quantum physics with relativity, for instance, something we don't know? And then you'd go, wow, look at that, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Mrs. Joe blah blah from so and so, who can't possibly have known all of this, has just solved this equation.
I have seen with some of the mediums I've worked with, them saying something to someone that there's no way they could possibly know. But, is it a lucky guess? I guess what I'm more convinced by is actually the ordinary people who write to me with their stories of things that they have sensed out of the blue, which they think that I'm not a psychic or a medium, but I sensed that my niece, who lives in Australia, had a heart attack. I saw it in a dream. The next morning, the phone rang, and my niece had died of a heart attack. That's what actually gets me now. People who are not actually in the business of it, who are having that. And there are a lot of those people who...
It's incredibly common, actually, isn't it, Theresa?
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredibly common.
It is. We've all got that. We've all got that inner medium in ourselves. And, some people decide they're so in love with that ability that they have that they're going to train it. A good medium and a psychic actually does do training, as you know. There are certain... I would always encourage, if you are going to visit a medium or a psychic, look at their qualifications. Look, are they scientifically validated? I love that now. There's a whole new breed of mediums who are scientifically endorsed.
What does that mean?
Well, they go through 3 to 4 years of testing under cold, I don't know the scientific terms, but under cold conditions like that. They will be phoned up by the scientists.
Who are the scientists?
Windbridge Institute is the place leading the world.
Who is the Windbridge Institute?
Windbridge Institute, you actually might like to talk to her, Dr. Julie Beishaw. She's leading the world in researching mediums. Now, her story is fascinating because she's a scientist. She worked in the pharmaceutical industry. Her mother died very tragically, under very tragic circumstances. I won't share them here because I don't know if she'd be comfortable with me sharing it. But she had grief therapy. She didn't believe in the afterlife. And then randomly one day, she went in to see a medium. This medium accurately, without knowing who this scientist was, gave the exact details of her mother's death. But nobody could have known. That, being a scientist, she was curious. She thought there could be, I want to find out. So she basically gave up her job in a pharmaceutical industry where she was testing drugs scientifically, and thought, what if we test scientists the same way? Mediums the same way as we test drugs, very simply, under exactly the same stringent conditions. And she's established that at the Windbridge Institute. It is amazing, their research, very promising results. And what they're now actually doing is that you can be a scientifically validated medium. And I urge anyone who's interested in this to check it out, because it's fascinating that they have mediums now who have gone through the scientific testing. And I tried to do that with the Premonition Code when I worked with Dr. Julia Mossbridge, the Precognition lady. We set up a website, the www.thepremonitioncode.com, where Julia created a scientific test, impossible for fraud to come in, you know, with random data, whatever, to see if she could identify what she called precogs, you know, positive precogs.
Yeah.
And it's still ongoing. It's a huge scientific experiment that she did, because what she wants then is to put them in the Hall of Fame, that they have passed the scientific credentials. And that is actually happening in the scientific community, more and more scientific testing of these people. And if you can find a medium who's been scientifically tested and endorsed, you know, that might be an interesting connection for you.
That is, well, I didn't know any of that. How fascinating.
Yeah, Dr. Judy Byshaw, she's incredible. Yeah.
So I guess we should adjourn until our next time we get to have a conversation. Obviously, I'll put with all of this stuff, if anyone wants to explore stuff about you, there'll be a link and all of that stuff.
I just want to say thank you for your kindness and being so patient with me, Tim. Appreciate it. And thank you for all you do. Your people who read your books are very fortunate. And I mean that genuinely.
Are you charming me now?
No, I mean it genuinely. I've read your books. I've been aware of you for a long time.
Oh, thank you.
No, I mean it genuinely.
I know you do. I'm just playing.
I asked you back twice. You know, it's quite an honour to be asked back.
I feel it. I do feel that. And I look forward to what we can explore, further. I also want to say, and this is really for anyone who's listening, who's interested, just because it seems relevant. We've talked about life after death and things like that. I had an experience 6 months after my mother died, of meeting her. That's what I experienced. And I recorded the exact story of what happened next, I think it was like the same day or the next day. So it's very, 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 because I know I forget. So
do you mind telling me what it was?
What happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's I can give you the short essence of it, I guess, which was my mum had died. She's a huge figure in my life, and I'd been with her the whole way through and looked after her. And then 6 months later, we suddenly got a phone call saying, "You've got a free ticket to a spa nearby for me and my wife." It's like, really? And it was so funny because it's like the sort of thing my mum would give us. And we said, okay, great, thank you. And we went to this free spa. And while I was at the spa, I was working on a whole load of ideas. I felt very alive, and with Deb my wife having a great chat in the hot tub, and then went to have a massage. And you know, the massage rooms are all like blue lights and nice music and stuff. And literally, the minute the massage started, I was gone, and I was somewhere else altogether with my mum. And had an experience with her of it felt like what I was seeing was that I was connecting with something which was more than my mum, but was still my mum.
Yeah, yes, the spark.
And the fact that she was my mum was really not irrelevant. It was, although she was far more than my mum, and it was like everything she'd ever been was present. So like right the way back and beyond, and I was getting to be with it, and it was extraordinary experience. And I was able to come straight out of that when the massage finished and find myself back, and sat down with Debbie straight away and just went through the whole thing. And then the next day went, I've got to record this. So it's a long rambling recording, which was done for me, not really for publication, but so many people have asked about it. I did stick it up. And you know, it's those individual experiences which I think have been most important to me. It's like, what actually happened? Something happened for sure. And it's like, what was it?
My early books were collecting experiences like that to show, you know, this happens spontaneously. For me, that something similar happened when I met both my parents in my dreams. Was in dreams. That's where I meet them and talk to them. And it's incredibly healing, and shows me that death has taken their physical body, but not ended our relationship. Our relationship
exactly
continued in spirit.
And actually, as we talked about psychedelic experiences, which, you know, I really do so infrequently, it just so happens
that that's what you're saying now, Tim.
It is actually true. But I did one last year.
Last year? I thought you were going to say like 30 years ago.
No, last year. And at the end of it, oh no, this was the year before actually. And at the end of it, there was this lovely, almost a comical moment where I was lying down and above me was a window, and with the sun shining through, it was lovely. And I finally opened my eyes and looked through the window, and I could see myself. So it was like I was having an out-of-body experience because I was looking at my body. I thought, normally it's the other way around, isn't it? You look down at your body, but I'm looking up at my body in the mirror. But what was interesting was around me was everyone who was dead, and they were like, it was like they were so there. It was just like, wow, hello. And it was a lovely, lovely, it was like just one after the other. Started with my mom and my dad, and then way back,
Do you find sometimes that communicating with the dead in that way, they're more alive than people who are alive? They feel.
I certainly found with my death of my parents, which are the most recent deaths that I've had, that and I've just been talking to a dear friend of mine who's lost his wife after a long period of illness, and he said the same thing. It's like, what I expected was that when I remembered, say, my mum, I would feel this grief. But actually what happened was whenever I remembered my mum, I experienced how close I felt to her.
Yes.
So it was there was the grief, but it was also the opposite. So the more I remembered it, the better I felt, not the worst.
To go back to what you said about religion, I guess it's the resurrection story, isn't it? That Jesus died and his followers felt closer to him in death because he was there for everyone in death. Yeah. That's basically, isn't it? When he died, he said, I can be with you all now in a way that I could never, in a more fully present way, in every moment. I can be in your every heartbeat, in your every breath now. Whereas when you're in your bodily form, you're limited, aren't you, by time and the material for how much you can merge with someone. In death, the union is complete, that person never leaves you.
Yeah.
Oh dear, I ended it on a really sort of down note.
I think that's on the contrary, Theresa, I think that's utterly beautiful. And I've been pushing to, because for my own interest, wanting to know how you deal with doubt and beliefs and all that sort of stuff. But when that's all placed to one side, what you've just said really resonates, because it does feel like at the depths, that oneness you talked about, we enter into a communion of souls, and that does feel deeper after death. So yeah, I get what you're saying. I really do. Yeah, I get it. And I guess a lot of what I'm trying to do is develop a reasonable narrative, a story, a thoughtful story, which can be really pushed hard and still hold together, that enables us to incorporate those sort of intuitions into how we see existence, and doesn't get them exiled and dismissed anymore, so that you're not a blonde-haired angel lady and I'm not a bald-headed crazy spiritual philosopher.
But death is the biggest spiritual awakening, isn't it? When you have your first death of someone, it's when you, for most of us, for many people, it's the biggest spiritual awakening, isn't it?
Just the mere existence. I mean, Plato famously said all of philosophy is a meditation on death, and God, that's how it feels to me. It's like, for me, that the idea that you could just go, well, who knows? It's like, well, there's a pretty big question here. Because, well, for me, the biggest thing with it, really, is not just like my survival or the survival of my daughter or my mum. That's huge, but it's actually whether life is redeemable. Whether, like, I've had a great life. I've been so lucky. If I die and that's it, it's like, well, it was a great life. But not everyone has. Some people have had awful lives. And then it's like, wow, so is existence the sort of thing where you could just be unlucky and have a really bad short life, child, and it's like, yeah, tough, that was it. And it's like, and then on a more comical note, the idea that you could be living through this incredible fucking thing where we're conscious and you have dreams and the infinite universe and the stars and quantum physics, everything, and at the end of which there's no debriefing, nothing. It's just like, oh, that's done. It's just like, fuck, you know, like, oh, gone. It's like, no, that can't be real, can it? That's just
there had to be a bigger picture for me.
That's too insane. It's too insane.
The underside of a tapestry, all knots and loose ends, but at one point you see the bigger picture when you turn over and see why bad things happen, why kids have to die, get cancer.
Yeah, so that it's looking for that redemptive quality, which my spiritual intuition says is there. Now, that can be me being deluded, but
probably
it doesn't feel like it. Could be. Yeah, I have made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that's why you're honest enough to admit them, at least, as I say, that, there is in this movement, when you write about this, people want certainty all the time. And yet in that moment, but every book, I guess, you write is a moment in time.
That's right.
You need to understand that time flows on.
Exactly right.
Changes, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's good.
I think so. Right, and now the time has flown on, and here we are. What a delight. Thank you so much for sharing yourself. Oh, I just lost you then. Right at the end there, we just had a glitch. Yes.
Your connection is unstable. There we are. That's the spirit world trying to.
We're going to disappear now, and
I just want to say thank you to Richard Cox for connecting me to you, because
Yeah, that's right. Dear, lovely Richard, isn't that great? Yeah, lovely man. So we'll speak again, and
you will, Tim, on my podcast. Well. Okay. And thank you for all you do. Thank you.
And likewise. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.